Way back in their glory days, Sega produced some of the biggest game properties in history. Sonic the Hedgehog, Streets of Rage, Alex Kidd, to name but a few. But there is one series of games which, while arguably bigger than the rest, is largely overlooked today. I'm talking, of course, about Wonderboy. No, not that one. Which has spanned a plethora of genres and platforms, while reinventing itself more often than even Alex Kidd. The Wonderboy series, or Monster World, depending on your region of the world, can, to the uninitiated, be daunting to traverse, being a confusing jumble of different ports, conversions, clones, and bafflingly named sequels. So, in this series of videos, I aim to set the record straight, so you can definitively discern your monster worlds from your monster lands, and your dragon's traps from your dragon's curses. The first entry, simply named Wonderboy, debuted in the arcades back in the mists of 1986. It was published by Sega to run on their System 1 hardware, and was developed by Escape, who are today known as Westone Bit Entertainment. It was a simple but challenging platformer with a standard plot. You are the titular Wonderboy, a half-naked juvenile inhabitant of a tropical island, and the Dark King has nabbed your girlfriend Tina. Go get her back. There are 7 horizontally scrolling areas to get through, each consisting of 4 rounds. The 4th round always ends with a boss fight. Looks to me like someone was inspired by Nintendo's Super Mario Bros., although if you ask me, it has a bit more in common with Pac-Land. Each round is broken up into 4 checkpoints, so if you lose a life, you will revive at the start of the last one that you pass through. You start the game unarmed, with only the ability to run and jump. You can't even leap on top of enemies to defeat them as you might expect, so instead you have to just avoid them. But find an egg and crack it open, and you'll find some nifty power-ups. Firstly, there's the hatchet, your only weapon which can be lobbed at enemies. You lose it if you lose a life, and you're defenceless again until you can find yourself another one. The skateboard increases your speed through the level and offers 1 extra hit point of protection, presumably thanks to that snazzy crash helmet. The angel grants you a short burst of invincibility, allowing you to tear through enemies with impunity. There is also a doll to be collected in each round, which doubles the points received at the end. Collect all 28 dolls and complete the game to unlock a hidden 8th area. You die instantly if you touch an enemy or a fire, or your vitality runs out, which is displayed in a bar at the top of the screen. Basically, it's a timer, counting down as you play. It gets cut short if you trip over obstacles or pick up nasty items, but it's replenished by collecting the food. Now, it might look cute and cuddly, but this appealing facade conceals an incredibly tough game. Enemies are largely easy to beat, but the difficulty arises from the unforgiving platforming requiring precision timing and speed control. While the skateboard offers an extra bite of the cherry if you get hit by an enemy or an obstacle, it moves constantly and you can't stop it, meaning some jumps are going to be certain death. Originally, the game was designed to have Wonderboy constantly running to up the pressure factor for the player, but not even the programmers could play it that way, so it was dropped altogether, with the skateboard as an apparent compromise. In some areas, it's vital to keep up a good momentum so that you can get the jump distances required to reach widely spaced ledges. So if you're off to a slow start there, you're already doomed. None of this is helped by slippy player character physics, which when you're at speed feel like you're running across ice. There are even some blind jumps, which in my opinion are cheap, nasty tricks, or at least a symptom of shoddy level design. No game that requires you to feed it your pocket money to continue playing should ever expect you to take leaps of faith into potential death. It's definitely one of those get good games where practice, copious amounts of practice, makes perfect. But I really wouldn't have had the will to pay as many credits as it took me to get even good enough to get into the 3rd area, which is where I noped out. If you're skilled enough not to lose your skateboard or weapon, then this is going to reward you endlessly. However, one mistake is all it takes to turn your journey through this game into repetitive, frustrating drudgery, as it punishes you with nigh impassable stages if you find yourself without your trusty hatchet. Even with the unlimited credits that MAME emulation offers, Wonderboy is still a mammoth effort to get through, and frankly, I really didn't care much to see it to the end. Something tells me that the juice really wouldn't have been worth the squeeze. So as you've probably guessed, I don't like this one very much. It's a particularly egregious example of an early arcade game that exists purely to snatch up all your money. It was first ported to the Sega SG-1000 in 1986. As you can see, it's as good an effort as you're likely to get on this console. The gameplay is largely there, although the levels, of which there are much fewer, have been redesigned and it omits the skateboard and numerous enemies. More faithful adaptations can be found on the Sega Master System, the Mark III and the Game Gear. These ports, released in 1987, sadly retained all of the difficulty, made even worse by the now finite number of continues, effectively making it even less forgiving than its arcade big brother. And to add insult to injury is the addition of 2 extra areas, dragging the game out even further. Activision took up the home computer conversion duties, producing versions for the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64 and the Amstrad CPC 464, also in 1987. The arcade version of Wonderboy was met with a lot of critical acclaim. It was the 5th most successful arcade machine in Japan at the year of its release, and in the Western arcades it was bested only by Capcom's vertical shoot-'em-up 1942. The home conversions fared less well, however. The Sega 8-bit versions failed to impress the discerning reviewers of Sega Power, with both the Master System and Game Gear ports earning a paltry 60%. The Specky port was beset by game-breaking bugs and was savaged by crash on account of its poor graphics, while the Commodore 64 version was lambasted by Zap for having crappy sound. The Amstrad port, being graphically near identical to the C64 version, divided its critics, earning 88% from computing with the Amstrad, but only 68% from Amstrad Action. In the first of the franchise's several title changes, the Sega Mark III version in Japan was renamed Super Wonderboy to distinguish it from the SG-1000 port, while the North American Game Gear release was renamed Revenge of Drancon. So we're already off to a great start with 3 different names for the same game, and that's before we get to the Hudson Soft clone. While Escape held the rights to the game's design, the rights to the Wonderboy trademark were retained by Sega. This meant that Escape were free to remake the game for other markets so long as it went by a different name. And so, after teaming up with Hudson Soft, Adventure Island was born, destined for the NES. The name change was sufficient to comply with the licensing agreement, but the main character was also changed from a loincloth-clad preteen to an affectionate caricature of Hudson Soft's then executive Takahashi Meijin, although to Westerners he was better known as Master Higgins. It spawned a series of sequels of its own, unrelated to Wonderboy, but that's a story for another time. Perhaps. In part 2, I take a trip to Monsterland to explore the first sequel in this storied franchise. If you have enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe for more. Click the bell icon to be notified of new uploads. If you'd like to help support the channel, why not join the action over on Patreon? Membership is only $1 and you will receive an on-screen credit as thanks, as well as early access to new videos 24 hours in advance. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time on Retro Respawn.